Before this world existed, the first world lay in darkness and emptiness, with the exception of 6 beings. They were First Man, First Woman, Salt Woman, Fire God, Coyote, and Begochidi, the child of the sun. Begochidi first created 4 mountains, white in the east, blue in the south, yellow in the west, and black in the north. But there was still no light. The first beings grew tired of this and decided to leave the first world. At the center of the first world, Begochidi planted an enormous seed, which grew into a tall, hollow reed. He then gathered all his creations and crawled inside. The reed grew out of the first world and into the second. The second world was light and blue. When the first beings emerged from the reed, they found a nicer place to live, but it was already occupied by the cat people. The first beings and the cat people fought for years and years, but in the end they couldn't overcome their differences. Again, Begochidi collected his beings and returned to the hollow reed. The reed grew on and on into the third world. The third world was yellow, beautiful, and full of light. The first beings rejoiced and built camps and had many children. Begochidi created rivers and lakes and mountains and all kinds of animals and birds. The first men and women lived there happily. One day, as Coyote was walking along the river, he found a baby, the child of the water monster of the third world. Coyote stole the baby and hid him under his blanket. When the water monster discovered his son was missing, he was furious. He sent vast rainstorms from all directions and flooded the third world. Begochidi and his creations ran back to the hollow reed to escape and forced Coyote to give back the baby. But it was too late. The third world was entirely flooded. Finally, the waters rose to the base of the fourth world. Locust helped to carve a hole into the next world, and all of Begochidi's creations crawled out to set up their houses again. Begochidi created mountains and set the moon, sun, and stars in the sky. This world was not as beautiful as the third, but it became the home of the Navajos. Begochidi taught men and women the right way to live, how to plant corn, squash, and beans, and how to give thanks for their harvests.
Damballa, the father serpent, created all the oceans and seas of the earth. As he moved through the endless waters, his 7,000 coils formed great valleys and mountains on the new earth. He brought forth stars and planets in the heavens, and the sun and the moon. He created different metals from the heat, and sent forth lightning bolts, which formed sacred rocks. When all of this was done, Damballa shed his skin. This caused great flooding on earth. But when it was done, the sun shone brightly over the waters and created the first rainbow. The rainbow is called NAVAJO. Damballa fell in love with the beautiful rainbow and made her his wife. Damballa, in NAVAJO, created the first city of Ife. It was the source of all power, all creations, and spirituality. The first of the Loa, or gods, descended to Ife to live.
Before the world had a true form, there were 2 gods, Tepehu the Maker, and Gukumats the Feathered Spirit. While the world around them was dark, these 2 glittered with brilliant blue and green feathers. They came together to create the world. Whatever they thought came into being. When they thought earth, land formed in the darkness. They thought mountains and valleys, pine trees and water and sky. All of these things appeared the instant they thought them, and thus the earth was formed. Tepeyu and Gukumats decided they needed beings there to look after their vast creation and to praise their names as the creators. So they created deer and birds and panthers and serpents, all the creatures that roam the earth today. Now, praise us, say our names, commanded the creators. But the animals could only roar or howl, bleat, bark, twitter, or moan. They tried as hard as they could to speak, but could not. They chirped and mewed at the top of their lungs until the noise was so deafening that Tepeyu and Gukumats ordered them to stop. Disappointed, the makers agreed that they would have to create better beings, ones who would be able to worship them properly. The first race of men was made from wet clay. The creators gave them life, and the first men tried to speak, but they crumbled apart soon after they were made. The Maker and the Feathered Spirit were determined to create a hardier race of men. The second race of men were carved from wood. These were much stronger, and were able to walk and talk and multiply. But these men had no minds, and their hearts were empty. They had no memories of their creation, and when they spoke, their words were just as empty and meaningless. They could not praise their gods. Tepeyu and Gukumat sent a great flood down to destroy them. They commanded the animals to attack the survivors and tear them to pieces. The few who managed to escape fled to the woods and became monkeys. The creators left them there as an example to the next race of men. The Maker and the Feathered Spirit thought for a long time about how they should make the race of men they wanted. There seemed to be no perfect material to build them. Finally, some of the animals brought the gods a stack of white corn, which grew on the far side of the earth. Tepeyu and Gukumats ground this into a paste, and from this formed 4 individual men. The new beings seemed perfect. They were sturdy enough to last, and their minds were rich with thoughts and feelings. Their first act after their own creation was to immediately worship Tepeyu and Gukumats and thank them for their lives. Tepeyu and Gukumats were pleased. "What do you see?" they asked the corn men. "We can see forever, through rocks and trees and mountains and to the edges of the earth. We can see your entire creation, with all of its animals and plants. We can see and understand everything." Tepeyu and Gukumats looked at each other. "Perhaps we made these beings too well. They should not see as well as we do." The makers removed some of the men's vision. After that, they could only see things close to them, and were no longer able to see through or above things that they should not. Thus their great understanding of the world was weakened. But the men still sang the Creator's praises and settled down to live on the new land. Tepeyu and Gukumats made 4 women to be their mates. These 8 men and women were the ancestors of all Quiche men and women today. Even today, their sight and understanding of the world is not perfect.